Okay, 1.4 is about domain and range, and I'm going to ask you to write it in two different notations. So one is inequality, then one is interval, and we'll slowly start transitioning from where you will only do interval notation, especially when you get to pre-cal and calculus. That's pretty much all you will use, but I think up until this point, you've used inequality, so we're going to try and connect the two. With inequality, you're going to use less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. And then with interval notation, you'll have brackets or you'll have parentheses. And it all determines whether, like if you have less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, or you have brackets, that's for a closed circle. So that's when you would have, like at a definite point, so that's when it's closed. Then the less than or greater than and the parentheses, that'll be for an open circle. So if I were to look at number one, we're just going to start with a two-dimensional line. I guess a one-dimensional line. Then we'll get to a two-dimensional plane. So for inequality notation, I'm going to write my two endpoints. So I've got -3 and I have 2. There's an x in the middle. And what signs would go? So -3 is less than or equal to x, less than or equal to 2. For interval notation, I'm going to take my two endpoints. Going to kind of write it like an ordered pair, so from -3 to 2, and since they're both closed circles, I'm going to put brackets around them. So when you have, like on number 2, when you have multiple stops, in the inequality notation, you'll have two separate inequality notations. So I'm going to put my endpoints. -4 is less than or equal to x is less than 1. And why do I have a less than 1 instead of less than or equal to? Because it's an open circle. Then, so I'm going to say or 2 is less than or equal to x. And then you see this arrow. So what would I say about that? It could go to infinity. So you could write it like this. This is one way, and this is an infinity sign. Just a sideways 8. Or you could say another way, and this is normally how I write it, I usually just drop the infinity and I put x is greater than or equal to 2. If you prefer that way. I would accept either of these. And you could just drop the infinity. You don't have to put that there. So I would accept either of those.
Why are you writing an x each time?
Because technically it's on the x-axis.
Oh.
So for domain, it'll always be on the x-axis, and then once we get to number 3, there'll be range, and we'll use a y. For interval notation, you're going to have 2 of them. So I'm going to say -4, 1, and then I will have a bracket on the left side, and then I'll have a parenthesis on the right side. So you can mix it up. They don't have to be the same. Then you have bracket 2, comma, infinity, parenthesis. Now a parenthesis is always connected to an infinity sign. They always go together because you can never touch infinity. Like, infinity is not definite. So a parenthesis or an infinity sign will always be connected with a parenthesis. Parenthesis, infinity. And then instead of using the word or, we're going to have a fancy U in the middle. And that stands for union. And this just takes practice. So if you're not understanding it just yet, hopefully by the last example, you will.
What is the U there for?
Union. It's kind of like saying or. Just the fancier way to do it.
It was just that hard to say or.
It was. Fancy map. Okay, now looking at number 3, now we've changed to a 2-dimensional plane. So for domain and range, domain is always reading it left to right. And you're going to use X's. Now when we get to range, you're reading it from bottom to top. And you call that Y. So domain, you're going to take your pencil, you're going to scan from left to right, then range, bottom to top. So what I normally do with these is I will take my pencil or maybe 2 different colors, like a highlighter or something, and I draw a line where my domain starts or where my function starts and where it ends, which means it's going to go on forever. So my inequality notation is going to look like what? There's 2 ways to write it. -5 is less than or equal to x is less than infinity, which I shouldn't have put less than or equal to infinity up here. I should have just put less than infinity because you can't touch infinity. Or what's another way to write it? This is more of the grown-up way. The second way, I could say what? If I drop the infinity. I usually prefer this way, but I would accept either of them. This is just the more grown-up way. Top one is the more baby way. My interval notation would be what? I'm going to start with a bracket or parenthesis. Bracket, -5, comma, infinity, parenthesis. Good. Now, range is a little different, so I'm going to take a different color highlighter. I'm going to read it from bottom to top. So I find my lowest point, which is right here, and my highest point. The function never gets any higher than this point right here, and my function is contained within these 2 points. So my inequality notation, what y value does my function start at? -1. So you're going to use your y value. So -1 is less than or equal to y is less than or equal to what? 5. Good. So I'm using the y values, not the x values, because you're going from bottom to top. My interval notation looks exactly the same, so it would be bracket, -1, comma, 5, bracket. And you're going to use brackets if anywhere along that horizontal line it is defined. Now, if there were only, so I'm going to erase this for a second. If this were an open circle right here at -1, then I would take this away and it would just be less than. But if it has a closed circle at any point, then you use the bracket. Okay, let's look at number 4. This one's a little different because it has some breaks in it. So I'm going to take my highlighter for domain. It goes all the way out to the left. Then it stops. There's a break. It picks back up again, and it goes all the way to the right. So let's write it the grown-up way. Since they're both approaching negative infinity and positive infinity. I'm going to say x is less than or equal to -2. And then x is what? What about this one? Greater than 2. So it's below -2, but it's above +2.
Do we need an or for this?
Mm-hmm. Now try writing interval notation. There's going to be a U in between. When you think you have it, look at the board. So you would, if it goes all the way to the left, you're going to call it negative infinity. Questions about this one? Yes.
What is the union?
Union. Like, same thing as saying or.
So does the negative infinity go first because it's
Left to right. Mm-hmm.
And do we read the same for range or?
Yes. So for range, I'm gonna take my different color highlighter. I'm gonna read it from bottom to top. Well, this is going all the way down to negative infinity. Keeps going up, goes all the way up to positive infinity. It does not stop here because I have at least one closed circle. So even though I have an open circle, the closed trump it. So I don't have to take a break there. So since it never stops and it goes from negative infinity to positive infinity, I write this as all real numbers. These are the easy ones. Then the interval notation looks like negative infinity to positive infinity. And you don't have to write the plus infinity. I just usually get in the habit of doing that for some reason. But the negative needs a negative sign, but the plus does not. Okay, I want you to try number 5. I'm going to give you a minute, and then check it with your shoulder partner. Talk about it. So for domain, read it from left to right. Furthest left point is x equals -4, and it's an open circle. And why does it not stop? Because I don't know how you guys did on this, but why does it not stop here?
Oh, because it's
On the
not a
same
function.
line.
Yeah, it's still it's still, while it doesn't have to be a function, it's still defined there. So I don't stop.
There's like no set. You can see how these two are separated right here.
You only stop if there's a gap, but there's no technical gap vertically.
They were
It's on the
smashed
same.
together.
Yeah. So vertically there's no gap, but horizontally there is. But it doesn't jump at all.
If there's vertical space.
Yeah, if there's a gap vertically.
So, okay, this is the
It's a weird way of thinking, but once you get it, you will have it.
Range is X.
Uh-huh.
So
it goes like, it doesn't go year to year.
Then the y's, it's the lowest possible point is at -8, stops at -4. Then there's this gap right here, horizontally. La La Land. No, there's a space. Then it starts up again and goes to infinity.
I still can't draw infinity.
Do what? Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that's the best one yet.
Okay, let's try another one. Okay, here's what we got.
If we put 4 4s, that's the same thing as a 4.
You put 4 fours?
4 comma 4.
Oh, yeah, same thing. So from left to right, I start at -5. I stop at -1, open circle. I have a space vertically, so I take a break, start back up at 2, go to 4. For range, that one's a little different. So for range, if I start from bottom to top, it starts at -8, stops at -4, takes a space, takes a break, and then it's just at 4, but it's a horizontal line. So I would say y equals 4. And for interval notation, I just need this bracket 4 bracket. If you did 4 comma 4, that's okay as well.
Wait. I don't. Where did the bracket 4 bracket come from?
Because I have a horizontal line at 4. Are you asking like why is it a bracket and not a parenthesis, or?
Well, I had
Oh,
the,
yeah, shouldn't one
I have
be-
the
someone
bracket
be-
-8, comma -4 bracket. Like I understand that. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Well, then I have a function like right here on this horizontal line. The reason why it's not a parenthesis, because although I do have this
Oh.
open circle, I also have a closed circle on the same line. So a closed always trumps an open. So even if I have an open, a closed is going to take care of it.
So I wasn't supposed to have bracket 4 comma 4 parentheses.
No, they'd both be brackets. Take the bathroom pass. So if you have a horizontal line and nothing goes above it, nothing goes below it, it's a y equals, and then it's going to be 2 brackets. Okay, try number 7. This one is a little bit more fun, a little bit easier. So it goes all the way to the left, all the way to the right, it goes all the way down, all the way up. There's no breaks, there's no holes, doesn't stop, there's no gaps. So you would say all real numbers for both domain and range.
That's a lot of-
So it's
So if
because
there's
it
no
doesn't
circle,
stop.
it's all
Mhm.
real.
Do what?
If there's no circle or dot, there's all real.
If it goes for infinity,
Yeah, if it's approaching infinity in the left and right direction, or in the like bottom to top, up or down direction. So for the range, you see this this arrow. There's 2 ways that you could interpret this arrow, and if this were on a quiz or test, I would accept both. You could think, okay, it's going all the way down and to the right forever, or you could treat it like it was continuing the trend. Either way. Either way, I'm going to show you both answers. So if you treated it like it was just going down and to the right, that means if you're reading it from bottom to top, it's going to start at -infinity, and then it's going to stop at the very highest point, which is +1. So you would say that y is less than or equal to +1. That means that everything, y is everything below -1.
so that's an exponent still.
An exponent. What does
I
that mean?
Like, it'd be a bracket for if we just.
So, yes. So then if I were to treat this like an interval notation, it would be parenthesis, -infinity, comma, 1 bracket. If you treated it like it were continuing the trend, like that, then it might be easier for you because it starts at -3 and goes up to 1. And then it would be bracket -3, comma, 1. So it depends on how you treated it. But the lowest possible point would be at -3. The highest possible point would be at 1.
If we lose the negative infinity, no one switches that fine.
If you had the what?
-1 and the, I mean the 1 and the negative
No.
infinity.
They have to be in order. You're reading it from bottom to top for interval notation. It wouldn't make sense to go from 1 to negative infinity. Okay, last one. You can do this. So, reading it from left to right, does it go all the way to the left? Yes. So it's going to start at negative infinity. Then I'm going to take my pencil, kind of like the vertical line test, and I'm going to go from left to right. And I'm only going to stop when there is a vertical gap. Okay? Vertical gap, meaning that there is a space, like my pencil is not hitting some sort of line. Okay? So I keep going. I stop here.
Found it.
Because at this point right here, my pencil is still hitting some sort of line at the -1. So you only stop when your pencil is not hitting a line. There's a gap, then it continues on again, goes out forever. So, gonna write this as x is less than what number?
4.
And it's bigger than what number?
6.
So I've got 4 and I've got 6. There's a gap between the two.
So why?
Okay, that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
Where's the
There's electricity.
Okay, good.
going on.
That's good. So I'm going to write it as 2 separate intervals. It's going to be from negative infinity to 4. And then 6 to positive infinity.
Oh gosh, where'd you get that? Oh, I found it. I just try. I'm trying to.
Now I'm going to take the range. What is my lowest possible y value? Does it ever go below this number? No. So it starts at -8. Going to take my horizontal pencil and I'm going to draw up. And is it ever not touching some sort of line? No. So it just goes to infinity. Because is my pencil ever not touching some sort of line?
That's the whole point of moving it.
So then y is going to be greater than or equal to -8.
See, I thought we were just doing that for fun.
So you have to think for range, I'm going to put my pencil horizontally. If it's not touching any line at all, that's when you stop.
Oh my gosh,
Bottom
that makes
top.
sense.
Yes.
So good.
And it's -8